Hey guys, it's Jeff with dirtyshirt.info. Today's project is going to be to replace an alternator on a 2001 2500 HD Chevy pickup truck. The symptoms that it's exhibiting are when the vehicle is at idle, the lights will dim, right? And as soon as RPMs come up, lights come up and everything seems to be fine. It still starts, everything on it is normal except that it is dimming. With a charging system, I'm never exactly sure that I have the right problem that I'm going to work on, but that's what we're going to do today. So I want to talk a little bit about the part. There's actually two types of parts that or alternators that can go on this vehicle. This is a 105 amp, and it also can take 130 plus amp, I believe it was. It's a little bit hard to discern which one is the correct one, so I took the truck up to the parts house. We walked outside, took it and did a side-by-side comparison. In the engine compartment here, it's relatively close, so it's right at the top here, but we do have the serpentine belt that has to be dealt with, so we're going to have to take apart a few more items in order to get to it, and we'll get into that in a minute. The first thing I'm going to do is I am going to disconnect the battery, because that is a direct connection to that alternator. What I want to do now is remove some of this ductwork that's on the top of the engine. The reason why I want to do that is because there's a spring-loaded tensioner pulley that is holding the tension onto the serpentine belt. And I can see it, it's right at the top here, but I can't really get to it. I think it'd be just easier just to pull some of this ductwork off, so I'm going to go ahead and remove that with a nut driver. Mass airflow sensor right here in case you ever have problems with that. That's what this is. Going into the air box. There's one side. There's two. Got a little plastic clip here holding this on. Placed a wrench on the tensioner, and I'm just now getting it to where I can get my arms around it and so forth. So if I bend it in, the whole serpentine goes slack. What I want to do is, as I pull this off the alternator, I'm going to try and keep tension on it because I don't want to have to redo the routing pattern on the serpentine belt. So I'm just going to sort of keep tension on it, like I said, and leave it down here without messing with it too much. All right, good. So now I'm going to take the electrical connections off of the alternator, and there are actually two of them. One is a plug and one is a nut arrangement. The plug on the top of this alternator is held on with a clip that you really can't see from the front of the vehicle, so here's a view of the back. So I'm going to pull that tab out and then lift the plug out of the alternator. The main electrical connection on the alternator, it just has this boot over it and it just pops right off, and then this is a 10 millimeter in the back, and it's just like I said earlier, a nut breaks loose, no problem whatsoever. The new part has a replacement nut on it too, so if you make the mistake of actually dropping this one, don't panic. They did give us another one, and by the way, the part that I bought is a remanufactured unit, and I'm okay with that, right? It's got a lifetime warranty. Sometimes remanufactured can get a little scary, especially if you're talking about brake parts. So there's the main wire. So now there are just two primary bolts. I do have air tools, and that looks like a long bolt. So I ran the air hose out here, and I'm about ready to hit that with an air ratchet. Okay, two 15 millimeter bolts. saw when I removed the other one that I used a pry bar to get it out, and the new one going in is just as tight, right? So you kind of got to manage that. What I've done is I've grabbed a shot-filled mallet. If you don't have like a rubber mallet, you don't want to beat on this part with a real live hammer, right? So maybe a piece of wood between it, but it needs help. There's no way it's going to go in with just muscle pressure. So what I did was I focused on one bolt hole first, right? I got that one lined up. I did slip this bolt in, and it's in, okay? So now it acts like a pivot point. This one's not quite lined up yet. It still needs a little bit of tapping to get it into place. So if I take the mallet and just kind of gently give it some help, this bolt will finally go right in. There it is. I use the air ratchet to just kind of snug it all up. I didn't even bother to look at the torque specs on this. I mean, it's tight, right? You know, oftentimes I do. For this, I'm not too worried about it. I'm just going to do this by feel based on the pressure that was needed to get it off. Okay, bolt one of the mount here is in and not tightened up. The second bolt I'm getting ready to put in. I had to, again, adjust a little bit here and there to get this bolt to drive home. And then tighten this one up. Its final resting place. Yeah, just like that. All right, electrical connection on the back is the next step. All right, alternator and electrical connections are in place. Now we're back onto the serpentine belt, and what I've been doing is I've got my wrench in place so that I can get the maximum amount of torque to take that tensioner and crane it all the way over so that it's as loose as it can possibly be. What I also do is I've got tension on it with my thumb. I took my other hand and I just sort of work things through to make sure that it was lined up on the pulleys. If it's just off a little bit, it'll never go on, right? So here we go. We'll take the tension off of it, and hopefully this thing will slip on to this alternator without a lot of drama. And you really got to check it. It's kind of dark down in here, right? You can't see very well. Make sure everything is squared up and straight, or else you'll have problems, or it'll probably would work its way into place, but I don't really want to find out. And it looks good. All right, so that part of it is done. Now we put the ductwork back on. Okay, ductwork is in place, and the two big clamps that hold this onto the both the intake and the air box down there by my cameraman. You want to make sure you get those really tight, right, and that they're squared away. And in fact, this one looks a little crooked. I may go back and fix that. But the point being is that you don't want to introduce air in any point. So those have to be good and tight, but you know, again, not over tight, whatever that means. If you introduce air into the system, right, it'll never run right. So there is the final battery connection. Let's give her a start and make sure that it's that it'll run and everything sounds okay. I'm going to look at the gauge in the dash, and I'm just going to make sure that it's charging. It was never really necessarily a problem to begin with. Because it was intermittent, right? It was working at a higher RPM, but it didn't seem to be working at the lower RPMs, and I never saw the needle jump. The true test of this repair is going to be me driving it around, sitting at lights, seeing if the lights dim, things like this. So it's difficult to test, but it'll take a day or two. Let's just make sure she starts up. As anticipated, so the needle says, you know, like volts charging. Okay, that's good, right? It's good, better than zero. So this is sort of like a really good father-son project, right? It's not overly complicated, assuming that you can diagnose it properly. And it's relatively easy to do. You don't need a whole lot of tools. You know, I used air. You don't need to use that, right? It's basic hand tools. Got this job done. Alternator itself was about $150. Not the cheapest thing in town, but you know, you did save installation here, so thanks for watching.